Boom, and we are live, ladies and gentlemen. It's 2:30 p.m. It's a Wednesday afternoon. I was going to say it's a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. It's not. It was a beautiful Wednesday morning. We've had hailstorms and rain since the beautiful sunny morning. So it's one of those crazy spring days when you have sunshine and hail and everything going on at the same time. Anyway, it's a Wednesday afternoon. It's 2:30 p.m. You are watching Innovation Fika. Every Wednesday afternoon, 2:30 p.m. I go live with my Innovation Fika, my innovation coffee break. Fika, of course, meaning coffee break in Swedish, with fantastic guests, incredible topics, and so many fantastic people online as well. And just seeing, and look at this, just live directly. Yash from India. Hi, Yash. Good to see you, sir. And just as Yash has, the good example here, follow Yash's example. Say hi and who you are, where you're from, so we get the networking going as well online. We want this. I run this live because I want the interaction. I want people to ask questions. I want you to comment on what's going on. Otherwise, I would just have recorded a polished pod and put it out there and wouldn't care less. But I want to do this live because I want live people online. So as you come online live, please add your comments, add your thoughts, add your questions. With that, I will just say as well, live on LinkedIn and YouTube, as you saw, Yash, and also Instagram, not TikTok today, because I do that when I'm in the studio only. And then all of the content is recorded and saved on, there we go, YouTube. 153 episodes today. 154 episodes after today's episode of my Innovation Fika. So with that, I will now introduce my dear guest coming in from Green Room, and I'm so happy to have her online today. I've actually known Beatrice for quite some time, and then the funny thing was, I asked the previous guest, who should I speak to? And somebody said, oh my God, you have to speak to Beatrice. And I said, well, I know her. And it was funny because we were like in touch like a couple of years ago. Anyway,
an inspirational speaker at one of our events that I organized.
Yes. And the funny thing is that they still want to speak to me. So that has to be a
good impression.
Yeah, good impression. And of course, there we got Göran as well. Hi, Göran from Cyber Campus. Welcome aboard, Göran Olofsson as well. Fun. Anyway, happy to welcome you into the studio, Beatrice. I will ask you the same question I ask all of my guests very shortly. Beatrice, who are you and what do you do?
Well, who am I? I am a very passionate person who loves working with people and trying to make a difference and trying to work with new solutions, trying to figure out what's coming. I work at a tech company called Nexer, and I'm a communication and culture manager at Nexer, working with our brand, both company brand, employer brand, our marketing activities, all those things. I'm a mechanical engineer. I studied at Chalmers, so I'm from Gothenburg. I'm sitting in Gothenburg right now, looking out the window. It's the same weather as in Stockholm. It was a beautiful sunny morning, but now it's kind of grayish, just stopped raining. So yeah, it's the way it is.
Yeah. Yep. Well, the thing is, the funny thing is, I had visitors to Stockholm like 2 weeks ago, and of course we had May, and it was beautiful sunshine. And I said, well, just wait and see. Once the closer we get to midsummer, the worse the weather becomes. And then after midsummer, as soon as we're past midsummer, it gets better again. It's kind of the midsummer curse.
Hopefully, let's see what happens. But
exactly
better than this, so it can only get better.
Well, I'm really happy to have you here, and I'm just looking at the chat thread again. Thank you, Göran, as well, from attending from Cyber Campus Sverige, and everybody else coming online. Introduce yourself as well in the comments because we want to get the discussion going.
Yeah.
And this is interesting because I've invited Beatrice today to talk about cybersecurity, but we're also going to talk about cybersecurity not only from a tech perspective but also from a human perspective. The importance of having a diverse workforce and so forth, getting that working because we need that. But let's just start with, because we had a pre-talk, me and Beatrice, before we connected here. Let's just start. I mean, the report that you put out is all about what people think about cybersecurity, right? Their feeling of cybersecurity. And I've gone through the report, and as far as I can see, most people are more scared today. That might mean they're more aware as well, which could be good.
good.
Well, the
It's a good
feeling is generally a bit darker, and one number was in the report where it said that only 2 out of 10 believed that the government could protect them from cybersecurity threats. And I was like, wow, I'm not saying it's a low confidence in the government, but I'm just saying that, that's a tough number, that so few people believe that there's help to be gotten.
that they, yes, that they know what they're doing, and that they can kind of keep everything safe, and are not any goal for any tax or anything. So
Yeah.
But just a short background about the report. We haven't released it yet. It's coming next week, and we call it Tomorrow Report. No, it's fine. It's fine. We're going to talk about it today, so it's absolutely fine. I'm just saying that you cannot get hold of it today, but you're going to get hold of it next week, because we do the launch next week. And what we do is we do this future report that we call, it's a Tomorrow Report. The name of it is. We have done many before. And this time we focus on digitalization, and particularly cybersecurity. So what we do, we have asked SIFO, Kantar SIFO, to support us in this. So they have asked the Swedish people what they think in different areas, different questions. And then we have gathered that into a report, made the analysis, and presented the different results. And then we get some really, really interesting findings. And this time we can also compare to a previous report that we did in 2022. We asked the same questions, so we can see what has happened during these 2 years, what has changed, what changes have been made, and are there any significant changes that are particularly interesting, or is it the same, or has it been better or worse, or what has happened? So there's some really interesting insights to be made from that report. I
thought so too. It was really interesting to see how, again, it was interesting to see how people's perception and feeling about cybersecurity as well. I mean, because there's one thing to talk about. It's one thing to talk about the actual sort of state of cybersecurity when it comes to number of attacks and things like that. But the other part is, of course, what our perception is it, the perception of it. And no, Yash, you're not cynical at all. Not to sound cynical, but the government can be as vulnerable as we are to cyber threats. Of course they can. I mean, touch wood. This is. I know I shared my screen before. Let me share my screen again. I mean, I'm sorry for. This came in today. Like it was from. Hang on a minute. Share screen. Share tab. This one came in on my newsletter today. And look at this. This is from Wired today. Medical target ransomware is breaking records after Change Healthcare. It's a company. They made a $22 million payout to a ransomware company. That means they've been held hostage by a company. And the cybersecurity firm Recorded Future counted 44 healthcare-related incidents in the month after in April, and then they actually changed healthcare's payment. $22 million in one payment to cybersecurity criminals. And as they say, and this is the scary part in the report here, the article, these kind of large payments are absolutely going to incentivize ransomware actors to go after healthcare providers, says the people, the guy who wrote the report. I mean, I'm just sort of, oh my God, it's like waving a, I'm gonna say red flag, but it's waving a whatever flag and go, hey, criminals, there's money to be made. Go, go, go. Like, get up the streets. Forget about the whole police thing. This is and then like my stomach, just my heart just dropped when I read that. It was like, oh my God, that's so much money. And in Sweden, we had Coop, the retail chain where, and it wasn't even them. It was their provider of the cash system. It was their vulnerability that closed down the whole retail chain, right?
And we've seen a few attacks lately, and I think it's of course the consequences of course there are consequences, but it's not that it's totally alarmed the whole nation or anything like that. It's not that kind, but still, even though it has a big effect on those, a big impact on those companies, and that is of course not good in any way. But I think one thing that is good though with those attacks is that it creates awareness.
Yes.
It creates that, okay, this is something that is happening. I think that management, CEOs, they really, get their eyes open, understanding, and here we have a risk. Things are happening. Look, they are a target. We could be a target. So I think that if we should look at from the good side and try to see the positive outcome of it, then at least it creates awareness that we realize that this is something we need to focus on. We need to really, really look into this and see what can we do to protect ourselves as individuals, but also companies, of course, what needs to be done to make sure that,
I mean, it's horrible to say, but you need some kind of a real big shakeup to. I mean, this is a bad example, but usually, the bad anecdote is that they don't put up the traffic light until somebody is actually killed on a street corner, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the same thing here. I mean, hopefully this will get companies thinking. But then coming back to that, then I mean, where does one, as a company, then where does one start? I mean, what do I start by doing? Because I mean, you can never be 100% sure and secure about everything and every single. I mean, where do you start?
And I don't think it's realistic to be 100% secure, because that investment is probably so high that you cannot even do that. But I think that what you need to do is to make a risk assessment. You need to make and have all the key players like management, the board, and also from, the ones that are more operational responsible, that they are aware what are our risks, what are we willing to pay to have the security level that we want, and also what are we risk to leave out? What can we afford to kind of put in there to be, okay, we need to secure this, but we do not need to secure this because that is not critical for our operations.
Exactly.
So you need to identify the critical parts and what's the investment, what are we ready to invest to protect that, and leave the other outside. So I think that kind of analysis needs to be done to be able to do that kind of quantification and do that analysis. That is what I think you need to start.
I think that's really good as well, because I mean, there's on a different note, I was working with a company here at KTH, and they were doing like a software to map out all the softwares in large companies. I mean, and it turned out like large organizations like Vattenfall and all this. I mean, they like had thousands of different. I mean, if you're looking from the smallest application on a personal computer to like a big ERP system, I mean, like thousands of different systems and applications, and all of them are, of course, not mission critical. I mean, some are like nice to have, and I mean, who cares if somebody's. I'm not no offense to designers, but if Photoshop breaks, and it might not stop the business, unless you are a business that has to have Photoshop and you're a design company. Of course, that would be terrible. I get it. I get it. Yeah. So that the risk analysis, I get that, but it's something we were talking about and I know that you mentioned this as well, is the understanding the context and the chain of events, because you're usually not alone in the world. I mean, you're not a fortress with a moat and nothing else. I mean, there's usually systems coming in from suppliers and others using what you're doing as well, and everybody is vulnerable, and understanding where things come from and where things go as well, right, to get the bigger picture going. Yes,
and there's always a lot of dependencies within an organization, and that I think also is one of the things that a company needs to work with, that you need to identify those dependencies and which one are the most critical one, which ones are the key dependencies, and how do you secure that? You need to look into not only the things that in your own 100% control, but also dependencies towards other third parties, suppliers, all those things. You need to identify those as well and keep your target on them, making sure that they have the processes to make sure that it doesn't happen. And I think that you cannot just trust on that you have a document, a contract, probably with a fine or something like that. But that is not enough. If you stand there and something's happened, that doesn't matter. Your business is the one that is affected.
Yeah.
So the legal stuff, yes, make sure it's there, but you still need to make sure that you have the right processes,
Yeah.
to make sure that they have the security level required for those key dependencies that you have in your organization. Once again, not for everything, too costly, but for the things that are critical, making sure that even though it's not 100% in your control, third party, you need to have control of their processes as well.
Yeah. And the thing is, the interesting thing is, we're talking about cybersecurity now, but this brings back memories about, there's so many anecdotes about this. I mean, I remember during the pandemic when suddenly the global supply chains broke and there was no fallback, there was no backup, there was no sort of, oops, what do we do now? Because we're being sort of lean, efficiency, everything. And it's like this, just in time, everything. So there's no stock, there's no slack, there's no fallback, there's no nothing. And suddenly everything just stops because we didn't have a plan for, if that doesn't work, then what do we do? And another one that I remember is that when it comes to the Swedish rail and trains, I mean, this is interesting because I was actually speaking to people in the, what are the ones, the not Trafikverket, but the ones that look after the actual railroads. And they were just saying, that, but the thing is that we've been, pushed into efficiency for so long and cutting. So yes, the trains work perfectly as long as the sun is shining and nothing breaks and all the passengers get there in time and everything is shipshape. But as soon as one single part of that machine fails, it's like a domino effect, and it just affects the whole thing down because there is no slack. There's nothing built, there's no room for anything else, right? And then, of course, exactly what Yash is commenting here as well. With the contingency plan, the contingency plan, and that. I'm sorry for talking so much here. You're supposed to be talking. I'm sorry for talking, but I remember when I was in the army. When you made a plan, you weren't allowed to submit a plan without at least one or two fallbacks of what's going to happen if the plan A doesn't work, because plan A never works. And you always need a plan B and a C, maybe sometimes a plan D as well. So that's definitely something.
You need fallback solutions. You need fallback solutions. You need to, that's part of the analysis, to have that.
Yeah. But the people part, then how do you work with people in your organization? I mean, is there anything to think of when it comes to the people part as well? Because I mean, it's people that does this, right? I mean, it doesn't happen by itself. There's no.
And I think when it comes to people, processes is one thing. That is, of course, a way to support and making sure that everyone knows what should be done and so on. But when it comes to people, I think that it's very important to have the right competencies. So everyone has knowledge of what's happening, because there's so many things going on and the technology is developing so fast. So there always need to be a continuous work with knowledge, competence, and making sure that you have continuous training. So okay, now it's ransomware, now this is this, now it's this, now you need to protect in this way. And there's always new things that needs to be added to your own knowledge and competence. So I think that when it comes to future skills, it's super important that we, not only in cybersecurity, but in all tech fields, I think that it's so important that we really understand the importance of upskilling or, working with making sure that we have the competence required for the new technologies. And that is one area where I'm very passionate, of course making sure that we have the right competence, but also in Sweden, if we look at that as a bigger picture, that we have enough competence, that we have enough people with the right competence as well.
Yeah, I mean, we have trouble with that. I mean, every industry in Sweden is more or less screaming for some kind of update.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a security incident at the university a couple of weeks ago, right?
Oh, interesting.
We did. It wasn't a cybersecurity; it was an actual analog security incident. But the thing was that we had then to take a step back and reassess everything and rethink of how we act and how we plan and look at all of how we and we had to think about, okay, what do we do next time something like this happens? And how do we make sure that we, make it possible for us to continue if something happens, blah, blah, blah. And also, that's coming back to what you were saying. We looked at each other and we said, look, we have to be able to tell each other that, okay, I think you should be doing, because we all make mistakes, and we're all, and especially if you're in the middle of something, you're like this, and somebody needs to be standing on the outside looking in and going, yeah, well, I can see it from the helicopter view. We should doing this and this and this instead. But we need to communicate with each other and talk to each other, and not be sort of, if somebody tells me, Donny, which I did by mistake, I posted something today on our internal Slack, which I shouldn't have posted. But then one of my colleagues said, maybe you should not have posted that. And so, and it's gone. It wasn't I wasn't offended. They weren't angry with me. It was just them reminding me of how I should act. And I think that's a cultural part. It's super important that we have to be able to remind each other, help each other, not be offended if somebody reminds you that you've forgotten to do something. That's not offensive. It's just helping. It's not a kind of thing. I think that's culturally super important.
Yeah, and I think in that way, you had a good intention probably. I mean, you didn't mean to offend anyone. You had a good intention with your action, but maybe you didn't think it through all the way. So then someone helped you to,
I just did what I always do, and it didn't catch up with me that I should have thought it through from the other perspective as well. Werner, happy to see Werner online today. And Werner, of course, yes, employees need, and this is important as well. Exactly. Everybody needs it, not only the IT guys, but everybody needs the understanding of it, definitely. And yes, the employees are often the weakest link. And again and again and again, we come back to, if your password is password 123, then it doesn't really matter how secure the actual encryption is. Then you'll break it anyway. So it's.
And speaking of that, I of course we know this with your password. You need to have a secure password. You need to change it regularly, and we know that. We have been kind of taught that now for many, many years. Still, it's a problem. We have also been taught that you should never click on a link that you don't know in an email, for instance. You should not do that. But it still happens. And now the new thing I've just heard is that now they use QR code instead, because they realize that now we have learned not to click on links. So now they use QR code instead, because those we still kind of trust and use. So now that's the new thing, that the QR codes are not secured either, because they could link you to the wrong place. So, I mean, it's always developing and getting more and more refined. So it's so important that you have this continuous training, as mentioned, of your employees, but also that management needs to understand. And also, make sure that they are on top of things, making, that they know what is the latest problems, the latest issues in this. Yeah. Because tech is everywhere. It's not just for IT department. It's for everyone now these days.
I mean, as long as everybody is using tech, everybody is vulnerable for tech threats. Yep. And again, I'm looking at the time here. This is the world's fastest half an hour. I mean, it's like whoosh. And as usual, keep questions and comments going, but we will moving into the end with the top tips here, because Beatrice is going to share with us as well. But we talked about some of them as well. I mean, the whole number one, continuous security training and awareness. That's kind of what you ended with before, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's important that the companies, this is for company mainly, I would say. If you're a management of a company, what should you think of those? So I left out those, the password things and those things. Leave those out. So this is more on a management level, what you should think of, what I think at least. So security training awareness, keep that, have that in your plan. Do this as a yearly, activity. Have that in your budget, making sure that it's, something that everyone works with continuously, not just a one-time off thing. It needs to be done regularly and also updated regularly.
Yeah. So I'll just add a comment. Yeah, adding from Werner here as well. Very important that you can report suspicious activity to your organization. And again, it's not that, you don't ever be, I tell my mom, I say, if anything you ever feels any bit fishy, just, send it to me or ask me. better you ask me 10 times too much than get caught once badly. So just ask. Don't worry about it. It's okay, So yes, it's horrible to say that we have to get into a society where we're reporting things that are suspicious, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and that you cannot trust everything. So we cannot be naive. We have to always think, is there something else behind here? You kind of have that in mind, that it's not always a good intention.
Yeah. Tip number 2.
Yes.
Alignment on monetary risk. And this was the management thing, right?
Yes. This is something we discussed a bit earlier here. And that is about that you need to do an assessment of your risks. What's the monetary value into it? What do you think it's worth securing, and what can be left out? So you have an agreed level of security, what kind of security you want, and what can that cost. That is an agreement needed within, the board management, all those. So everyone has an alignment in that risk.
Yeah, and also we talked about at the beginning there, getting to a point where you have to prioritize what are we going to protect, and what's mission critical, what isn't, and where does the limit go for what we're prepared to do. Yeah, very, very good.
Yes.
And number 3, then, identify key dependencies and security processes. This is so important.
Yeah, and this is, I think we touched it as well, that you have to do the analysis for your own activities, of course, but those they usually do better, but also key dependencies for third parties, others, where you have dependencies for your business to run the way you want. And if you don't, and you need to keep that in control, not only by contracts and legal aspects, but by actual, operational processes, making sure that they are aligned, not saying that they are aligned, but actually are aligned and compliant with your agreements. Otherwise, you might encounter very, very unpleasant surprises that you don't want.
Yeah, and again, in Sweden, we have the very bad example of Coop, the retail chain, that completely got stopped. I mean, they couldn't charge money from anyone because the supplier of the cash register systems, they were vulnerable for the attack. So Coop might have even had all of the security things in place, but the actual software that they brought in was the Trojan horse kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
it has a huge consequence for Coop. They couldn't have any customers that during that time. They couldn't charge any money.
Yeah.
So all the food wasted, everything. It's huge.
It was terrible. It was terrible. Thank you. I'm thinking lots of comments here in the chat. Thank you, Werner. I mean, happy to see you online. I'm so glad that people are active. I think this is something that really engages people. It's important, and we just need to be more vigilant and help each other as well. There's nothing wrong with helping each other. There's nothing wrong with reminding each other if you forget something, or if just we need to help each other, because obviously the dark forces are they're out there. So anyway, look at this. It's 3 o'clock on the nose. The world's fastest half an hour has just passed, right? Like a flash.
Could I just, before we end, make a tips for the coming report if they are interested in knowing more? I don't know if you can see. No, you cannot see.
But will there be a website anywhere?
There will, exactly. That's what I'm coming in. Nextgroup.com. Our website, nextgroup.com. So it will be available next week. And then you can take part of all the interesting insights about the Swedish people, what they think, have they been exposed to any cyber attacks? Yeah, super. Thank you. Wonderful. Next week.
Next week, starting. That's the week starting June 17th or
17th. Yeah, 17th. Yeah.
There will be the report on the state of the nation, of what the Swedish population thinks of cybersecurity. So check that out. It will be free to download. I understand, a PDF to download.
Yep.
I've read it. It's really interesting reading. And thank you, Josh, and thank you also, Werner, for joining us today, and everybody else as well. Thank you for commenting. Werner, wonderful. And anyway, everyone out there, thank you so much. This is Innovation Fika, the world's fastest half an hour with interesting guests on interesting topics, at least a trailer for the movie that you'll get when you get in touch with Beatrice on LinkedIn. So follow her on LinkedIn, get in touch with her, and if nothing else, talk to her about how to build a better work culture, because that is her biggest passion. There we go. And Beatrice, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm sorry for speaking as much or even more than you did, but I just got so engaged in the subject. This is so very, very interesting and so important for all of us.
Love the energy.
Thank you again, everyone out there, and thank you, Beatrice. And with that, I will say thank you and goodbye.